So now we're ready to begin with the left upper extremity sequence. And before we do so, I want to explain to you what we're doing, because I think if you understand and look at this illustration, you'll understand more the why behind what we are doing. The goal is to move the fluid across the chest over to the unaffected side in the armpit area or axillary nodes. Also, we'll be taking a look at pushing the fluid down to the inguinal nodes or down towards your groin on the same side. And prior to that, we're going to be working at the belly, because the belly is an area where we can really facilitate a lot of the lymph vessels. We have a lot of lymph nodes and lymph vessels, and it's at the base of the largest lymph vessel that we have in our body. So we can really start activating the fluid there and the lymphatic fluid within our body before we begin the entire sequence. So with that, let's begin. When I'm looking at the belly, I want you to take a look at we're working within all the bony areas of the abdomen. So underneath, that means underneath the rib cage and just above your hip bones on either side. And to begin with, let's start over here on the left side. I found that with many patients that you just don't have a lot of strength perhaps in one arm or the other. So sometimes it's nice just to have one arm as kind of like our anchor or our paddle, and the other arm can be the push. So what I want you to do is work on the left side here, right beneath the rib and above the hip bone. And your hand is going to be on the side here. And with this pusher hand, I want you just to push in towards your abdomen. Now this is an area where you are going to be pushing a little bit harder, because we are affecting lymph vessels and lymph nodes that are deeper within the belly. But I want you to think of doing this 5 to 7 times, just on the side here, pulling in and relax, in and relax. So it's kind of like you're scooping in and relax, in and relax. Next, we're going to go just above the hip bone, and you can think of putting your little finger just inside your hip bone, and pretend you're at the beach and you're scooping sand. So I want you to just pull that fluid up and relax. And we're going to do that 5 to 7 times. So you're just pulling up and relax, and then up and relax, up and relax. And we'll just do it a couple more times. But each of these techniques you can use 5 to 7 times. The same thing over on this side. You've got your hip bone over here, you've got your little finger over here. This will be my paddle, this will be my power hand. And I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to pull it up and relax. Kind of pulling it up towards the belly button. And relax. Stretching the skin, the same technique, using that skin. Stretch that skin what you can and relax. Pull it up and relax. Notice I'm not sliding my hands all over the skin. I'm staying fixed, but I'm pulling that skin up and relax, and up and relax. Next, we're going to look underneath the rib cage area here. And here, I just want you to push in and relax. And push it in and relax, in and relax, in, relax, in, relax. And let's go in the center of the gut, just above your belly button. Just push it in and relax, and in, relax, in, and relax, in, relax, and relax. Let's do one more time there. And then lastly, right underneath your rib over here, we're just going to be pushing it in and relax, in and relax, in and relax, in and relax. So effectively, we've really gone now all the way around the gut, pushing that fluid in. And sometimes what I've told patients is that we've created in a way a lymph pile in the middle of our gut. Now the next exercise is to pump that fluid up to within our system, up that largest lymph vessel that we have, running up through our trunk. To do that, let's put both of your hands on your belly, and I want you to take a good deep breath in through your nose. Now as you breathe air out, I want you to push both hands into your gut and exhale. Now hold that fluid if you can. Hold that pressure and breathe air in. And before you breathe air out, move over to your left side. And now let's exhale. Pushing that air out. So hold that pressure if you can there. Hold it. Breathe air in. And move back to your belly button and let's push it out. Excellent. Okay. Now hold that pressure. Breathe air in. And this time move to your right side and let's push it out. Hold that pressure. Breathe in. And back to your belly button. And push it out. Excellent. So that completes the abdominal sequence of the manual lymph drainage. Now we're going to be working above the collarbone because this is an important area. This is where the lymphatic vessels re-enter into the venous system or your circulatory system. So to do that, I want you to sit up a little bit straighter, and I want us to do some stationary or some circles with our shoulders. And to do that, I want you to raise your shoulders up as high as you can and then back. You can put your arms wherever you're comfortable, but I really want you to focus on up and back. And up and back. About 3 times will work enough for us. Up and back. Next, I want us to look at stretching the skin on either side of our neck. And so to begin with, let's have you just take your ear and bring it down to one shoulder. You don't want to lift a shoulder up, but just over to one side and then up. And let's go over to the other side, and then up. Over to the other side, and up. Over to this side, and up. And we'll do one more on each side. So let's go over to this side, and up, and over to this side, and up. And lastly, let's take a look at some rotation. And so I want you to take a look at looking over your shoulder without moving your shoulders. So just try to keep your body stationary, but turning your head as far as you can to one side. And then slowly let's look over your other shoulder without moving your body, just turning your head. Let's go back and we'll look over that first shoulder again. And then over the other shoulder. And one last time over each shoulder, you're going to look over one shoulder and then switch over to the other shoulder. Now, as I said, we're working on the left upper extremity, so I want you to work at clearing the area just above your collarbone. We call this the supraclavicular fossa. You don't have to remember that, but this is the area where I want you just to gently put your hand. Remember that stationary circle? I want you to think of taking that skin and moving it towards your neck, down to the collarbone, and then relax. Okay, let's try that again. Towards your neck, down to the collarbone, and relax. Make sure you have your hand over the collarbone, because if you're rubbing on the collarbone, that can be kind of painful. But if you just take that skin and pull it towards your neck, down to the collarbone, and relax. Because we're hoping to get a lot of the fluid to dump into this area. Okay, and next I want us to work on, remember those L's. I want you to, this L pattern, so I want you to take a look at clearing the unaffected side. So let's take your hand and put it in your armpit. We're just going to be doing some circles where you can just pull that fluid. And sometimes I say just kind of pull it towards the direction of your heart, just kind of doing some moving of the fluid there. You can feel free to move a little bit below the armpit, or you can even go above the armpit. But we really just want to work at clearing that whole armpit, because think of it, that's a drain. This is the area where we're hoping to get a lot of the fluid to move to. And once we've got that cleared, now we can think of clearing this side of our chest. So just above the breast, I want you to take and push the fluid towards that armpit there. So again, it's kind of like a stationary circle. See how I'm pulling half of that way, and then I kind of dump it into the armpit. Let's go again. And each of these areas you could go 5 to 7 times. So if you find that you have a lot of fluid on one side of your body that you want to dump over, you might want to spend a lot of time clearing here. And the reason it makes sense to do this is if these vessels are empty, it's more of an area that we can push fluid to. It's easier for fluid to go into an area where the vessels have been emptied. See, right now I'm going over my breast and then up to the armpit. Over my breast and then up to the armpit. You can also work below the breast then too. We want to clear this whole area and this whole quadrant. And up to the armpit. Now, once we feel like we've cleared this area, we've got this transition area between this side and this side of our body. To do that, sometimes it works well just to take both hands and just kind of on your breastbone, you're going to be moving towards the unaffected side. So again, a stationary circle in that direction and relax. And you can move down like between the breasts, take that skin and pull it over and relax. And over and relax, over and relax. I'm going to lean back a little bit so you can see under the breast. We'll clear this whole area. And you can spend a lot of time at this area, just trying to open up. In a way, it's kind of like a division here. If we can kind of open up this gate here between this side of our body and that side of the body, it allows us to be able to push more fluid from our affected area to our unaffected area. So now, after we've cleared this area, we can begin by clearing the affected breast above the breast, and we can actually move that and push it all the way, work it all the way over to the armpit here. So we're going to go above the breast, and you can do all of this about 5 to 7 times. Each of the areas, I think that's a good general rule of thumb to allow you to be able to do this in a decent amount of time that it doesn't take up your entire day. Going around. And then into the armpit here. So way, it's kind of like you're flushing this fluid over into this area. Let's go on top of the breast. And so if you can see, I'm moving it from the affected area to the unaffected area and then kind of dumping it into my armpit here, the axillary area. Let's go one more time across the breast, in the middle, and then along on the unaffected side, and dumping it over into your armpit. And lastly, right beneath the breast, over. Now feel free to, at this point, you could put it on pause and keep doing the sequence many times just to really open up the division between your unaffected and your affected side. That helps complete the clearance between your affected and unaffected side. Next, we want to take a look at this sequence. And we have lymph nodes right between where your leg and your body meet. And so here, it's if you can put your hand right at that fold, right between your body here, and you're going to just be pulling up and relax. Again, this is that same stationary circle. We're lifting up and relax. And then up and relax, up and relax, and up and relax. So about 5 to 7 times there. And then after we clear this area, which we call the inguinal nodes, I'm now going to be working on the side of our trunk because we can effectively push the fluid, as I showed in that diagram at the beginning, down the side. So you can take your hand and push that fluid down towards your groin. Now it's important to try to get on the side of your body if you can, not on your belly, but really down just on the side. And you can almost think of it in 3 areas. 1, down by your hip, at your waist, and then on your side here. So if you did 5 to 7 times here, and then you can go 5 to 7 times at your waist, and then you can do 5 to 7 times on the side of your trunk, moving downwards. And then as we do that, you can work it your way or kind of flush it out. So you're kind of emptying all that area to go down into the inguinal nodes down here that we cleared. And finally, we're able to move on now to our affected side. And to do that, I want you to start with a stationary circle by putting your hand up by your shoulder, just above your shoulder here. And we're going to lift that up just like we did at the beginning, 5 to 7 times. We'll go up here. Now, this fluid has an opportunity. It can go right into the side of our neck, just above the collarbone. So we can then just move that at that point, kind of dump it into this area above the collarbone. But notice how, again, we're stretching the skin. We're moving in a circle, not going too fast or squeezing too hard. But look at my freckle, trying to move the skin. Now, after you've done that about 5 to 7 times, you can move down. Now, I want to say we're working on this outer side of your arm first. So we did this side. Now let's work on this outer side of your arm. And again, we're moving up. Now, if this feels awkward to you, you can also do what we call a pump. Remember, we showed that at the beginning where we went up and up. Just really using your hand to lift that skin up. And as you work on the side, then you can kind of flush it out and dump it up. Or we could effectively work it across the chest as well, like we did. Up and relax. And now I'm just going down by my elbow, up and relax, up and relax, up and relax. So again, 5 to 7 times, clearing this outside. So once we've cleared by the elbow, we can kind of walk it back up and kind of flushing that fluid out of there into just above the collarbone, and we can also work it across the chest, below the collarbone. Now, I want to focus on the point between the shoulder and the elbow, and here I want you to move that out. So kind of with my palm, and we're just pushing that out, like 5 to 7 times at the top of your arm, and in the middle of your arm. Can do this 5 to 7 times. And down by the elbow. Now from this point, let's flush that out. So we're going to do those pumps, going up, up. Again, don't think of squeezing with your thumb. You're just really using your hand best you can to just pull that fluid up, dumping it up here by your neck, or we can work it across your chest, or another area. Again, we've opened up that pathway between the armpit and going on down. Now, many people are sometimes afraid or hesitant to touch the affected area, maybe the scar tissue, but that's okay. You probably still have some lymph nodes that are in your axilla, and so you can actually take that fluid and you can activate some of the existing lymph nodes that you have there, or we can work behind and pushing that fluid on down towards your inguinal nodes. I find with a lot of patients that this is a problem area, and sometimes a good way to clear that area is if you can put your hand on top of your head, and let's just take a look at pulling, doing a stationary circle, pulling down and relax, down and relax, down and relax, and then just moving in and down here, down and relax, down. So it's kind of like you're pulling that fluid up towards the top of your arm. It's a little confusing when I say down or up, but just pulling it down. Think of you're moving, again, the fluid down to our inguinal nodes, and we want to move the fluid and flush it over towards our unaffected side. But it's perfectly okay to touch the fluid and to touch the vessels and the skin in your affected armpit, axillary region, and move the fluid on down, pushing it down towards your inguinal nodes and across to your axillary nodes, going across the breast. Sometimes it's easier with your other hand to move it over and up to your arm. So there, we've covered from the shoulder to the elbow, moving from the outside of the arm, then the inside to the outside, and then flushing the upper all the way back up and over. Now we're down to the elbow. And at the elbow, perhaps it makes sense just to get comfortable and rest your arm on someplace and put your other arm, put your hand in, and let's just do a stationary circle on the inside portion of your elbow. 5 to 7 times here. But another area that gets kind of problematic is around the elbow bones here. So you can see, I'm just for demonstration purpose, I'm going to show you right between here and here sometimes. Kind of like that little valley between this bone and the pointed elbow and the other bone over here. So what I want you to do is you can even do some stationary circles with your fingertips. So just kind of take your fingertips and try to feel inside that groove between the bones. And now lift up and relax. Up and relax. And sometimes this area can be a little bit thicker and tougher, and it's okay to push a little bit harder at this point because this will help loosen up some of the fluid. So you can push and relax and do the circles right in here and then on the other side, 5 to 7 times on the other side of your elbow. And then once we've done that, we want to flush that fluid up and out of the arm. So we're going to take that and we can pump that up and out of the arm. We can go in towards our neck up here. And on the forearm, our next area that we want to focus in on, we can just move the fluid directly up the arm. And it's important to look at moving the skin on both the top side of your arm and your underside of your arm. So we're just going to take that skin, just do a stationary circle on the arm. So you can do this 5 to 7 times there, and then move on down 5 to 7 times here. Being aware again of the tempo and that you're not squeezing too hard, you're just really moving the skin best you can. And then down by the wrist. Now we need to get the other side of the forearm, and so you can do that by just turning your arm over. And let's go up by the elbow again. Or 5 to 7 times works just fine. Just clearing and pulling that skin up. And down. Now sometimes I have patients and they're very stiff, and perhaps maybe their hands are sticking off the arm. Really focus on using your hand. Don't waste any space. So if your fingers are moving in that direction, you might as well try to grip onto some skin and do what you can to move that skin upwards. So now we've covered the both sides of our forearm, and now we can work at the wrist. And the wrist, just relax your hand if you can, and we're going to take our hand on the back and just stretch that skin. So just on the back of the wrist, you can work here 5 to 7 times. And after you've completed that, then you can take your hand and go right on top of the hand. Sometimes the hand gets really puffy. So this is one way of moving the fluid out of the hand. Again, just stretching that skin. But another way that you can do it is if we do stationary circles with our little fingertips right between the bones that you have in your hand. And you can take that and move through each of those areas 5 to 7 times. You could take those fingertips and really trying to move the fluid. Kind of move between each of these bones that you have in your hand. So then, once we've covered the back of the hand, be it with a flat hand or with your fingertips, then we need to clear out the fingers. And with the fingers, we can also work on a stationary circle where you work at the base of the fingers. So kind of take your thumb and kind of push the fluid up, or push the skin at the base of the thumb, and then gently work at taking your fingers and moving all the way towards your fingertip. Once you get to your fingertip, then just slide it all the way back down. And then you can move on to the next finger. And again, if you've got really swollen fingers, feel free to put this on pause and just work this area. Try to get that fluid going before you move on to the next area or the next finger. Again, you would do what I'm doing here to all of your fingers, the base of the finger, doing a stationary circle if you can. And then working here all the way to the end, and then you can just kind of push all that fluid back. Stationary circle on each of those fingers from the base, clearing the base. And here I'm even using these 3 fingers, just kind of doing whatever I can to work all sides of the finger and get that fluid from the fingertip all the way down to the base. And now we'll do the little finger. And kind of slide that all down. And then we'll complete it by taking that fluid now and moving, going back in the back of your hand. And we're just basically going to work at flushing all of this fluid up out of our arm and to the available lymph nodes that we have in the opposite armpit. And down to our inguinal nodes. And we can even make use of the area that we have just on the left side of our neck as well. So here I'm going to use the side of my neck is one area. Or I can move the fluid across my chest, and sometimes that's just, with both hands, it's easier just to move all the way across, flushing that fluid that we have into the opposite axilla, armpit area. And remember, the last way we have is to move it down. You can almost do behind the armpit, or on the armpit is fine. It's not going to hurt anything if you're working in the armpit. And pushing it down to the inguinal nodes, down. Sometimes I think it's easy if you think of moving it down towards the direction of your feet, just downwards. So there, we've completed this pathway, we've completed this pathway, we've completed the arm, and we've completed the upper extremity sequence. So now we've completed the manual lymph drainage on the left upper extremity, but to finish it all up, we've moved the fluid down to our inguinal nodes, we've moved it to the opposite axilla, but now to finish up, what I want us to do is finish up with some deep breathing. So let's take a deep breath, breathe in through your nose, and breathe out through your mouth. Just some deep relaxation breathing exercises. So let's just breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And one more time, just breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth, and feel good that you've completed the sequence.